again, and welcome to the Prince Magnum channel. I'm your host, Prince Magnum. Welcome to In Your Face. Today we're going to talk about my favorite car that I've ever had. The best car. I mean, I'm telling you, nothing like it on the planet. My 1977 Oldsmobile Delta 88 Royale, known as Old Gold. Let me tell you all how this came to be. Old Gold was actually a family heirloom, if you will. My grandparents bought Old Gold used from a friend in 1984. They used to actually take me up to the bus stop in this car when I was in kindergarten. Tells you how long ago this was. And she was an amazing car. My grandmother loved this car and drove her regularly. Drove her to Quincy, Illinois. We're talking, this is up by St. Louis. Drove her to Illinois, Ohio, Florida. This car even went as far as South Carolina to take my grandfather to see his old Army outfit from World War II before he passed on. So this car had been in my family a long time. Well, in 2000, my grandfather passed away. To be exact, September 11th, 2000, 1 year before the World Trade Center. And when he passed on, Grandma did not have a need for two cars. And at this time, I'm driving a 1980 Chevrolet Malibu station wagon that had a 267 small block in it. And this car was ugly, ugly, ugly. Needed a lot of work as far as the body went. And the engine had a lot of hard miles on it. Was just literally falling apart, and no amount of work could have kept that thing running. Spun a bearing, and I needed a new car. Grandma initially was going to give me Old Gold, but I did not want to just have a car given to me. I asked that I buy it from her. And between her and my dad, they worked out a price that was fair, more than fair. Actually, I made off like a bandit still. I bought Old Gold for $450. And that was how she came into my possession. When I got Old Gold, her transmission had been going out for the last 7 years. It took that long. And my grandparents babied this car, you know. Her carburetor had been rebuilt numerous times. And as a matter of fact, her odometer was slowly creeping up on that 300,000 mile marker. I am not kidding you. This car was awesome. And this was an awesome car. I drove her for about a month, then her transmission completely went out on me, and we had saved the transmission from my old station wagon, which it was a 350 turbo, and we installed it into Old Gold. I drove it like that for about a year, but then I let a friend drive her, and he basically blew up the transmission. She had a small leak in one of her transmission lines, and I hadn't had a chance to get it fixed, and I told him to watch it. Well, he was pissed off. I beat him in a race with Old Gold. He had like an 80s Toyota Celica or something like that. I forget what it was. It was a little Toyota, and I blew his doors off. So he was pissed off, and I let him borrow the car to go get his girlfriend, and he blew up my transmission, son of a... Anyhow, so Old Gold sat for a while I got the money together to rebuild her transmission, which I had decided I wasn't going to go with that transmission because I didn't like it, and I wanted something a little bit different. I wanted a 350 turbo pre-1975 for reasons. And in the process of getting the money together, some kids got a hold of Old Gold and vandalized her. They had tried to make off with her carburetor. They bent up her trunk lid, knocked out all of her windows, busted her windshield, headlights. Amazingly enough, they didn't touch tail lights. They broke They broke several pieces on the dash. I mean, they really tore her up, and we did catch them. Actually, my dad caught one of them, and he ratted out his buddies. I did get some money for restitution, but then again, it was one of those deals. And in the process, I had to get another vehicle in the meantime while I put Old Gold back on the road. And that was an '83 Mercury Grand Marquis Colony Park station wagon. That is a mouthful. And had a 302 in it. And at a later date, I will tell the story of that car, because that was a cool car in itself. Some oddball things that you wouldn't believe on a station wagon. But I digress. Old Gold. So I had set out that I was going to put her back on the road. I spent the next year massing parts and changing this out and fixing that, and finally, at the end of it all, I put her back on the road, which was a funny story. Had got her windshield replaced, and I took it to this shop over in Farmington and pulled in and told them what needed to be done and everything, and I went off to work. In the process of all of this, I went over there to check on the progress, and the guys at the shop said, "Oh, her engine's locked up." I said, "Bull crap! I just drove her in here yesterday. Don't give me that her engine's locked up." And he said, "Oh, I said, I'll tell you what. I'm the one paying for this." I said, "Here's what I want you to do. I want you to take and put new plugs in it, new wires, cap, rotor bug, and I want you to rebuild the carburetor. I'm going to be back here tomorrow. If it is not done, she will go to a different shop." Just like that. "Do you understand me?" "Yes, sir." I said, "I'll see you tomorrow morning." I came back the next day. "How's it running?" "Like a champ." I said, "Don't tell me that engine locked up crap." I said, "I know better than that." And I said, "By the way, this car's been in my family since 1984. And and I said, "Let me hear her run." He hit that key, and her original Chevrolet 350 fired right up, sounded smooth. So put it back on the road, and she ran like a dream. The 350 turbo that we had in there, I didn't like. I had it rebuilt with a B&M shift improvement kit. With that 350, we had a dual exhaust installed, and basically I started doing modifications that I knew were going to translate into a new engine, which we'll get to in a minute. With her original 350, I watched the odometer turn over another 2 times total. We're coming, and I'm slowly creeping up on 500,000 miles, and I was winning races with this car. Matter of fact, between the year 2004 and 2005, and at this time, street racing is a little bit different than what we know today. It was a different time, and there was still a lot of fast and furious stuff going on, and the Japanese tuners at that time, if you were to translate them today, they weren't that great at that time. I mean, they were beefy, they were quick, but they're definitely not the same. Totally different breed today. Old Gold would have a hard time keeping up with the new ones today. How you guys do them today, in all fairness. But the ones back then, I was easily outrunning. I had 25 races, won, and I didn't lose a single one of them. And in that time frame, I also raced Mustangs, Camaros, Firebirds. It didn't matter. Everything I went up against, I outran. There was one guy I was going to race, but I knew he was going to kick my butt, and he had a beefy El Camino. It was about a '81 Chevy El Camino, and that thing had a tunnel ram sticking through the hood, a dual quad tunnel ram. I'm like, I am not about to even try. I'd just get my butt kicked. So, but that was the only car that I felt at that time could have taken me on, because at that time, the scene was totally different at that time. And this was the car that, when I got sober, this was the car I had. and the racing pretty well stopped after I got. There was one more race after that, um, but we'll get to that in a minute. Um, I had completed the engine that I had wanted, and it was a 283, a Chevy 283 from 1965. And now some of you right away will say, Prince Magnum, you went to a smaller engine. You had a Chevy 350. You went to a 283. Why did you do that? And let me explain. See, a lot of you out there, the 350 would have been either just bored over, or you guys would have turned it into a 383 stroker. I didn't want to do what everybody else does, and even today I don't do that. If I see an engine that I like, um, an engine that, for whatever reason strikes my fancy, maybe there was something about it, from our history, I'll gravitate towards it, and I will do whatever it takes to make it happen for me to get to build that engine. Um, that's just how it is. If I like a particular engine, and at that time I always wanted to do a Chevy 283, so because of that, I was able to, I got lucky enough to get my hands on one, rebuilt it, and it was an awesome engine. Um, I did lose power compared to the 350, but overall it was just a much, much, much better engine. What was done to it? Well, let's just start at the tail of the tape. This 283 was bored 30 over. It had 8.2 to 1 pistons in it, of course, oversized. Um, I had the crankshaft turned down 10 thousandths, had the connecting rods resized, and um, let's see, it when we originally did the engine, the power pack, I still had the original power pack heads and had those shaved 30 thousandths, hardened valve seats to accommodate for unleaded gasoline, because for those who don't know, the 283 from 65 had to have lead in its gasoline. So we to get around that, you just put hardened valve seats in, and it's not that, it doesn't cost that much really. Um, it had a intake off of the LT1 Camaro 350 Rochester Quadrajet. The cam in it was for an RV. Basically, it was a cam for a 350 that you would put in an RV, and it provided a great deal of all-around performance, including gas mileage. It was one of the many secrets of the gas mileage of that engine. Uh, Pretty much, it was pretty much bone stock for the most part. Otherwise, stock exhaust manifolds. I did have the heads um, around the exhaust ports. I had the flashing taken off, which isn't a big jump in performance. It just gives you a couple extra horses, and it just helps the heads flow so much better. And I also had the exhaust manifolds. We did the same thing to the exhaust manifolds. So it wasn't as good as headers, but it wasn't bad. Um, and I'm not a big fan of exhaust headers unless it like came with it on the engine, mainly because factory exhaust headers do just fine, but typically your aftermarket, during that time, was notorious for blowing gaskets. So I didn't want to mess with that, because I was going to be driving this car every day. So I just kind of skipped that and just went ahead and did exhaust manifolds. Um, there was one other major difference. Well, a couple of them. The oil pump was a high pressure but standard volume because I ran the stock oil pan. I didn't need the high volume because I was running a standard. But if you run a high volume oil pump, be sure you get the deep sump oil pan, or otherwise you'll suck that thing dry and lock up your engine because there will be no oil on the bottom end. That was just one of those things. But I wanted the extra pressure in case something went wrong, just in case. I did because it had a canister style oil filter, because I didn't want to always to go out and have to look for that oil filter or anything like that. I got an adapter plate that allowed me to run the regular twist-on oil filter, so that was pretty awesome. Um, and it literally took a Fram PH5. That's it. If you had the PH5 or the the like that, um, basically you can run that type of filter on it. It was a big freaking oil filter. Uh, it literally took an entire quart of oil just to have oil in that filter. So it was pretty awesome there. Um, so it was a 5 quart oil pan with an extra quart just for the oil filter. Um, let's see. The had a Edelbrock Signature Series chrome open element filter on it, 10 inches, standard HEI distributor, but with Excel parts. It had the Excel HEI ignition coil on the top of it, and of course the um, distributor cap, rotor bug. I had 8 millimeter wires on it. Excel rapid fire spark plugs, gapped at like 55. Even though the engine called for like 35, I capped them at 55, and it ran just fine. Um, Good and solid, 350 turbo, B&M shift improvement kit, dual exhaust. Was running the MagnaFlow catalytic converters on it, even though I didn't have to. Just kind of keep it along the lines that it came with a catalytic converter, so I wanted to kind of keep that theme going, and I ran it through Thrush turbo mufflers, and that was the tail of the tape there. I was also running on 15-inch tires and wheels. Uh, there at the end, I was running the American Racing wheels, their updated rally wheels, which looked really awesome on that car. 4 doors, it did not matter. Those wheels really made that car pop. Um, it still had the original single track GM rear end, but the gears in it, I didn't bother to take the plate off. Basically, what you did is you got up under there, and there was a number stamped on the rear end, and if you ran that number in an old Chilton's manual, depending on which one it would literally tell you the gear ratio. And if I remember correctly, it was a 241, really high gears in that rear end, which is what gave her amazing top speed and great fuel economy. And the top speed was 135 with that 283. With the original 350, though, it was 145 with the same setup. And I know how did you know that? The speedometers only went up to 85 in those cars. Yeah, I know that. But see, there was a little secret that most people don't know that you could do to get your top speed. What I did was I knew somebody who also did street racing. I said, well, what's top speed in your car? And he said, 135. I said, tell you what. I said, why don't we run them side by side and we'll kind of figure it up from there. And I was able to get that accurate number because we were running, pretty much neck and neck. So that was how I was able to determine that. It was just an all-around awesome car. And here's here's an awesome story. Shortly, all this is going on. When I first got into sobriety, and one day I decided to go ahead one more street race just for fun because my sponsor was getting on to me and didn't want me street racing. He didn't like all the performance and everything. Um, I I was out there racing. Yeah, I knew I was going to end up in this race. I got side by side against this green Mustang. It was a '96 Mustang. It was green. It was the only one I'd seen like that in this area. Um, Basically, we ran them, and I broke my speedometer that day uh, because I was just, it was one of those deals. I'd done this so many times. Initially, that speedometer was going to break, and I broke it. Um, I outran them, and the funny part of that story is, years later, I ended up buying that Mustang. That was ended up being Project Beauty. Years later, Old Gold had actually outran her. Um, Again, Old Gold was an amazing car, and it wasn't just performance that I threw in there. There was all sorts of cool stuff done to that car. I even had racing ceramic brakes up front. I mean, I had a lot of work tied up in this car. All total, if I went to sell the car, it was worth about 10 grand. However, unfortunately, in sobriety, I got with the wrong gal, and the water pump was going out. And I don't know why. I guess I got a part that was just kind of weak to begin with. Um, and I told her not to touch the car. I was going to fix it the next day. And I didn't bother to get the spare key. She took the car out anyways, and she blew the heads on it. And when I say she blew the heads, she cracked the original Power Pack heads that had been shaved and all that. Power Pack heads are hard to find. Pretty much, you might as well say they only exist on paper now. They're hard to find. There was a time you used to be able to find them everywhere, but you can't find them now. So she blew those, and she tore apart my dash and all sorts of stuff like that. She just did a number on Old Gold, and that was pretty much the end of Old Gold. The mother of my son, Prince Python, she was the one who destroyed that car, pretty much. She did a lot of horrible things to it. I think at one point she even uh, broke. She busted a pin in the A-frame, about wrecked it, and I mean, she was always tearing something up on that car, and I had a hell of a time trying to keep up with it. But I should never let her touch that car. But that was Old Gold. Real quick, couple quick stories to kind of tie it all together. Um, Old Gold, like I said, was my favorite car, and I had her from 2001 all the way up until actually we scrapped her in 2008, and I drove her a lot. Um, Even with that old 283, I love that engine. Oh my God, that was an awesome engine. Um, you heard the story about that Toyota Celica. Um, there was, let's see, there was one day, um, a friend of mine, the same friend that was in the when I raced that Toyota Celica, same buddy. Uh, he goes by Mercenary. He Mercenary decides to borrow Old Gold to take her over and pick up a soda. He had this thing for huge sodas, and he's getting coming back up to work, and somebody in this Dodge Neon pulls up beside him, starts revving it, and it had the decan muffler on it. And he reaches up, puts her in neutral, and starts racking those pipes. And and she still had her original 350. And guy motions for him to roll down the window. And he's like, "What the hell have you got in that car?" He said, "Well, it's not my car, it's my buddy's, and it's just a little old 350. He's like, "I was going to run you, but Chevy 350, screw that. I'm going home." So that was one of those deals, you know. Old Gold was just an awesome, awesome car, and I do miss her. Um, I'm maybe one day I hope to find another one like her and finish it. Um, Side note, for all of you, that was my grandmother's baby, and we were supposed to get together, and I was going to take my grandmother to her old hometown, to Quincy, Illinois, and she was going to show me all the hot spots, and we were going to take Old Gold up there, and I was going to drive, and basically we were going to, just take the old hot rod up there, Old Gold, and we were just going to spend time together. And my grandmother is still alive. She's 93, and even though we don't have Old Gold anymore, maybe one day we'll do it in Project Spirit, and that'll be just as good for me. I'll just get to spend time with my old grandmother, hopefully before she's long gone from this world, because she's an amazing woman. I love my grandmother. All right, that brings us to the end of this episode of In Your Face. I hope you all enjoyed hearing about Old Gold, my old 1977 Oldsmobile Delta 88 Royale. Uh, if you'd like to hear more stories about Old Gold, leave a comment below. If you'd like to hear more stories about other cars that I've had, also leave a comment. If you leave anything hateful, expect one of two things. Either A, I'm just going to delete it, or B, I'm just going to make fun of you. Either way, you might as well just skip it. As always, hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. If you are not subscribed to the Prince Magnum channel, I believe you're missing out. There's something on here for everybody. Okay? Little something for everybody. And um, as always, get out there and work on a project. I don't care what it is. Maybe it's a 1977 Oldsmobile. That'd be cool. Anyhow, if you got a sweetheart, sweep them off their feet. Do something special for them today. And as always, if nobody has told any of you that they love you today, Prince Magnum does. God bless you and have a happy 24. Thank you.
Good night, ladies.